All right, guys. So, you know, Angela pretty much inspired me to kind of start this whole thing. Stronger was something that I kind of had in my heart, and I knew I needed to go forward with it. Um, so I appreciate you guys joining along with this, with this initiative that I'm trying to do, and it's mostly for the community of San Antonio, so that way we can continue that spirit of, doing things together, staying strong together, and basically, just supporting each other and having those resources available through these connections. So I appreciate you guys and your expertise in offering this. These are really trying times. And with my own experience, I want to educate myself with different techniques and different tools that I can use in my own family and for myself and, for my business. And as a woman, as a mom, as a supporter of my own family, as a friend, and then also as a community leader, I want to be able to equip myself as we continue this journey together during this pandemic. It's just all so new to us, but sometimes we don't necessarily know how to process that, if that makes sense. I think it just came on so strong. I am deep in my faith, and I'm still walking in that spiritual journey of learning and growing. But even at that, I feel like I've been tested at many times with just the energy of my mind, my brain. I'm exhausted. I know we are all exhausted from worrying so much, and the anxiety has become a pandemic in itself, that so many of us are just trying to cope. I know I have received so many messages, and this is the reason that I'm doing this. It's just the community that I have of women, of everyone, all the friends that I have never in my life had so many text messages and direct messages before with deep conversations. And, I'm supportive of them, and I try to be positive, but I need to equip myself better with understanding how to process this in a healthy way. And that's why I admire your expertise for both of you. And I wanted to introduce you guys. This is Angela and Collin. And did both of you have social work experience? Is that, or just Angela?
Yeah, just me. Collin's a licensed professional counselor.
Okay.
Licensed to do therapy, just with different schooling background.
Okay. And, and right now, the only form of communication that we're really trying to, to connect with is online, is social media. And it is the way that we're trying to keep going. And with your feed, I've been so inspired. Just all of the things that you post, it's like, oh my God, you got me today. It's like it's so relatable, because it's deep conversations that we think in our head, but you kind of say it so clear. And I just wanted to start off with that, because my friendships are so valuable, my family's so valuable. And if you guys want to introduce yourselves, I know that you started your small business, and that's what inspired me. Can you tell us about yourselves?
Sure. So I'm Angela, and I've been a licensed social worker since 2008. I've been a licensed clinician, so to provide therapy since 2013. And I've known Collin for like 10 years, I think. And we worked together for about 3.5 years, most recently at a psychiatric hospital together. And it was during our time working together there that we really kind of had this idea and said, you know what, we just need to do our own thing so that we can do things the way we would want to and reach people the way we want to, and use the skills that we know we have that we didn't always get to use in that setting. So that's a little bit about how, it really was like pretty quickly when we started working together, we started thinking about it, and it's just been this thing about, man, we need to do it. When's the time? And as crazy as it might have sounded to try to start a business during all of this, pandemic, we really felt like there was no better time than right now. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. My name is Collin. I've been a licensed professional counselor since 2013. And I think starting Concentric Counseling and Coaching was really our brainchild from early on when we started working together professionally, and really comes from this idea that there's greater good for the community, and it's not just go get therapy or go see your therapist or go to counseling. It's really about educating the community as a whole, and really being an advocate for mental health and for how do I deal with anxiety and how do I deal with depression, so you can support each other. And that's one of the things that we really have a passion for is, community education and training, and more than, this stigma of, well, I went to see my counselor today, and really being that advocate for other people.
Yeah, and really, like Collin said, just finding I don't know, I guess like the nuts and bolts of it is that we want to empower the community to be able to better take care of themselves. And that, yes, as therapists, we will always be around if you need that additional support. But if you could feel like wake up every day feeling that much stronger and capable, like more prepared to face your day, and how do I manage my anxiety, or instead of like having a panic attack, like what else can I try to do to help myself in that moment? Or, I know there's a lot of conversation right now of how can I get off medication. Medication, is very helpful and it's very needed. But if we can help you better care for yourself, or, how to model that for your child about how do I manage my breathing, to maybe help your child avoid getting on meds, that is something we really just have such a passion for. So.
That, and even if we can have like employers or businesses manage for their employees, good self-care, good mental health care, that's definitely something we are interested in as well too, because I think, some of the stuff we'll probably talk about today is like, how do I even address with someone that I'm feeling this way? And so just everyone being aware that it's okay to talk about this openly, and how to support someone so you don't feel kind of uncomfortable and shut them down a little bit. So.
Yeah, and like you said, even just remembering to breathe. I mean, honestly, it's just, I scroll my feed sometimes, and I'm not looking for bad stuff, but I just kind of want to see the positive in it. But sometimes you just get that somebody passed away, somebody, and it's like, it literally chokes me up, and my heart starts racing, and I just kind of like, it's an awful place to be, and I know so many people are in worse situations. And with that said, I wanted to kind of jump into something that's, dear to me to address to my friends is, what are some ways that you guys can offer advice on coping, I guess coping mechanisms that would help for my friends and my family and myself. I often find myself in those conversations on via text, and sometimes I want to offer some good advice or just some insight that I wouldn't have other than I'm here for you.
Sure. So I think the first thing, and I have a feeling that we'll probably say this a lot, but just in general, is like to really validate that person. Just like you said, I'm here for you, and even kind of empathize and say like, oh, I know what that's feeling like. I felt that way before. And so that's always kind of goes the extra mile for someone who's just saying like, you're valid and having that feeling. Because immediately if you kind of shut down and you say those things like, oh, don't feel that way, or it's going to get better, or, look at all the good things that are going on. I think sometimes right away that kind of puts up that wall where like, okay, I don't know if I can talk to this person about even coping, but really validate that it's okay to feel the way you're feeling right now. So I think that's the first, like, it may not be a coping skill, but I think it's a great like start to having a conversation about coping with stuff. It's just validating that feeling.
Yeah, I think it definitely puts you in the mindset of like, we're gonna have this conversation, even if it's really hard to have it, right? And even if that's with yourself, right? Like telling yourself, like, you know what? Like, so if it's to me, right, Angela, you know what? You're feeling this way. Like, it's normal to feel this way. You're not the only one. Let's take some deep breaths, right? And like, then try to decide, right? And then that would be the next step of like, okay, now what can I do about it, right? But I think that Collin's absolutely right. There has to be a level of validation first. So that, we have to acknowledge that we're feeling this way. Because the more we keep saying, like, it's not a big deal. I felt stressed before. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Or if we keep listening to, while people are well-intentioned in telling you, it's okay, don't feel that way. It's going to get better. Things always do. Let's focus on the positive. While they mean well, it really dismisses our feelings. And it puts us in a place of like, oh yeah, they're right. Okay, I'm just going to forget about it. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. But it's not fine. That word fine means the exact opposite. And I mean, it just, anytime we find ourselves saying, we're fine, they're fine, it really means that it's not fine. That's us trying to convince ourselves that we're okay. So I very much agree with Collin that we have to start there of acknowledging our feelings, saying out loud if we need to, like, these are real, this is happening, this is exactly how I feel, or this is how my mom's feeling, and I don't really know what to do with it, but it's real, and like, this is where we're at, right? Just so you can then open that door to the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, you kind of asked, like, what can we do skill-wise? I think it can be from the very simple to, like, sitting with someone. Maybe, I know that we're social distancing, but, you know, depending on how comfortable everyone is, like, taking a walk or, you know, making recommendations, like, why don't you get out of the house? I mean, that in general will probably do some for people. You know, right now, if people are in the home, they're only going out to maybe get groceries or do things. So, like, try to do something that isn't the essential, I have to go to work or have to, you know, go outside. Listen to something, you know, peaceful, you know, sit in your backyard and just close your eyes and do some things that are not like have to do this. Some things that are more calming or some things that are more relaxing for them.
Yeah, and even if it's as simple as when you are doing those things, like if you have to go to the grocery store, that means once you put all the groceries up, or maybe as you're making that last like trip from the car inside, you take a minute to like pause and say, like, you know, you take in the sun, you take in the warmth, the heat. And I get it's 104, so we don't need to be outside all the time, but like at least enough to like, our body still needs the vitamin D. Our body needs that heat to like kind of wake up our senses, right? And I think that that's a lot of it. So we talk about like listening to something calming, whether we're putting on music or, you know, white noise or just to nature, or trying to really tune into, like, if you have children, listening to them play. Like, you don't have to be playing with them, but just like listen to the sounds that go on in your house and like remind yourself, like, this is my reality, this is safe, I'm okay, you know, we will be okay. I'm not okay right now, but we will be okay. I think are just some kind of like simple things to really start off with. Just taking those moments to just really pause. I think beyond that, right, would be like deep breathing exercises. There are a lot of really great apps, and I'm happy to share like some names. Like Insight Timer is a great meditation app. Happify. There's one called Tapping Solutions. That one's a little bit more involved, but it teaches you how to tap like your pressure points to help you calm your entire nervous system. I have it downloaded on my phone, and I've used it periodically throughout my days when I start feeling a little panicked and kind of overwhelmed. And I mean, I feel relief pretty quickly. So, and again, because the app teaches you how to use the technique, it's not, you know, going over your head. Like, it's really practical tool. So Rooted is another one. It's like root, R-O-O-T, and then D. I think it's a little owl or like a little somebody.
What's it, Calm?
Oh yeah, the Calm app.
The Calm app is a good one.
Calm app. Okay.
I don't know. I just see it popped up on our screen, but someone quoted, "I'm not okay right now, but we will be okay," and like just create like a mantra for yourself.
Mantra.
And like every morning, remind yourself of that. And then I think this is. And I know for me personally, it's really hard to just disconnect. But sometimes you might just have to disconnect from social media. Because you're right. I mean, we do see all the negative stuff. So it's okay to put it away and say to yourself, like, I'm going to designate this hour to focus on something that has nothing to do with what's going on in the world. So if I listen to music, if I watch, you know, the Real Housewives TV show that doesn't do anything for me but stimulate me to laugh, you know, something that is just going to be not focused on what is going on, because you have to be able to take yourself into consideration and do those things for yourself. Maybe it's eating ice cream or baking your favorite dessert, something that you really, you know, can do for yourself in the moment.
Yeah. And I think Collin's right, like that idea of like scheduling it for yourself, because then it's going to hold you more accountable. Because if it's like anything, right? If we say, I mean, yeah, I'll get to it, I'll do that today, sure. Like, that's the first thing that we're going to say, I don't have time for it. Right? But like, put it in your schedule. If you know in between meetings, and even if it's like, whether you have an hour, you've got 20 minutes, whatever it is, that means I'm going to not pick up my phone and look at anything. I'm not going to read the news. I'm not going to turn on CNN. I'm going to watch a mindless like television show. Or I'm going to listen to some music I haven't listened to. If you play music, you know what? I'm going to pick up my guitar for 10 minutes just because I haven't made it a point to do those things, right? It's, I think really like underlying a lot of this, it's about reconnecting to yourself and the things that you feel most passionate about, the things that really speak to your heart. And so whatever that means for you. But again, being intentional about it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you guys went into, I guess, a lot of questions that I have in terms of just, you know, how can my actual, I know my brain, but then my body then takes over. It's like, you know, it's like this whole thing. It's like, oh my gosh. And then your heart starts racing. Then you just kind of like, but, you know, the breathing techniques and getting out of your element. And you're right, soaking up the sun and just listening to music. And I like how you said tapping into those senses, because sometimes it is overwhelming and we can't process things, but if we dive into that, it just helps us calm down. And you went into a lot of things that we can use on a daily basis, because I know that this is, we kind of have to maintain our brain, right? I mean, it's like a daily thing, so those practices can be taken during the day as well. And so I wanted to go into kind of how you guys help people. I feel like the whole world is suffering trauma right now and grief. How does the brain process that, and how, you know, what goes on when that happens, when there's so much trauma? And, you know, I know we're all, you know, subconsciously grieving, and of course many people are actually grieving. What advice do you guys have for us, and how can we better understand what's going on when we feel those feelings?
I'm gonna go.
Better.
Well, I mean, so I'll just say my piece, and then I'm going to give it to Angela, because I know she is the trauma person between the two of us. I know it, but she can articulate it better than I can. But I will say, just again, acknowledging that it's happening, and really, instead of trying to push it aside and say no and denying that and what we may not think is traumatic or a trauma, definitely can be. You know, one of the things that Angela did a little video about that we can share with people is, like, just because it wasn't something you think of like a big traumatic event, you know, like abuse or something like that, doesn't mean that these daily things that occur are still not traumatic for us. And then it just kind of like, we have this trauma meter, right? And all these things just kind of get put together. And so then it just becomes so overwhelming, right?
Yeah, definitely, right? And so Colin's talking about like the little things that happen in our day, like the fact that we were at work full time, or our kids were at school full time, and boom, all of a sudden now we're not. That's traumatic. When our daily routine, our normal gets just shut down, right? Like there wasn't a gradual thing. It was like, you're at work and now you're not at work. The kids were in school and now, you know what, you're not in school. And that's traumatic, because there's not a lot of, especially for the kids, right? There's not a lot of explanation we can give other than it's not safe to go to school. Well, what does that mean, right? Like that's a big concept for them. And so over time, every day we have all these, what we would say, like little t traumas, right? Like they're small t, like, you know, it's not a big deal, but maybe I missed my alarm clock. That could be traumatic. If you have a really busy day, then you, like, it kind of just puts you in this tailspin of like, I'm never going to catch up, right? But then by the end of the week, you are just wiped out. You are done. And now it's a big capital T. Your stress has turned into a big trauma. And that's really what we're facing right now during this pandemic. And, you know, to speak a little bit to what you said, like what's actually happening in our bodies, our entire nervous system is like a 5-alarm fire is what's happening inside of our body. And our brain is like that. And the more trauma we have, the little T's that happen lead to those big T's, like trauma, like the bigger trauma. And that, I mean, really, it starts shutting our brain down. And we no longer function from the front part of our brain. So it's harder to make decisions, and it's harder to think clearly and make, like, and reason, you know, like the pros and cons of something. And for kids especially, that part of their brain, because it's not very developed anyway, it turns off so fast. And all we get then from ourselves and our family and our children are very emotional responses. People are, you know, they can't breathe all of a sudden, and now I have headaches all the time, and my stomach hurts, and I'm crying all the time, and now I'm afraid to go to bed, and now I wet the bed again and I didn't used to. And like all of these things start happening because our body is literally shutting down. Our nervous system just gets so maxed out with just trying to like breathe and get through the day that it's no longer capable of handling like complicated stuff, right? So even the simplest of tasks become a challenge because you have to think
Yeah.
so hard about doing them because your brain isn't working at its full capacity anymore.
Right. Yeah. And so I think just exactly like Angel said, your brain kind of shuts down. So then we go back to these very maybe primitive responses. You know, we may freeze more often. We may lose concentration. You know, people may be more irritable even or agitated and not really know what's going on. And again, just acknowledging that these traumas happen doesn't make it go away. But the idea of knowing like, oh, I'm maybe processing things differently because all this extra added stress, because these things are traumatic for anybody. You know, so I think that that's absolutely what can happen with the brain and the body, and you're more tense even, and you might have some more physical ailments even, you know.
Yeah, and I think like specifically to talk about grief, because you mentioned that word, that is such a stigmatized word. We don't talk about our grief, right? We're just going to be sad at home or by ourselves, and society tends to associate grief with just because somebody died.
Right.
But like grief is the loss of, right? Like the loss of my routine, the loss of my independence, the loss of whatever. I mean, it is, right? It's the loss of something.
The loss of seeing my friends,
of seeing your friends.
Yeah.
Like the loss of the social component. We were built to connect to one another. Like as humans, that's what we need to biologically function correctly. And now we've lost that opportunity. And yeah, it really just flips us upside down, and it's hard to find our way back up. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and the main things that have affected us is our safety and our socialization.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, that's, you know, I mean, we socialize. We have tons of events. I mean, San Antonio, we're just grieving, you know, as a whole city.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and those are the things that, you know, how I know a lot of people are feeling isolated as well, and that those feelings of loneliness and the word depression has just, you know, become a new norm. Can you speak to that? You know, I have had friends that have dealt with people during depression, and maybe, you know, some people that I know might be going through that, and I don't know how to approach that sometimes, or how to understand. I don't know how to understand that completely, but I do want to be mindful of, you know, of that, and considerate of people that are going through that in our community.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing to say kind of would be, like you kind of mentioned it, like we're grieving as a community. So even acknowledging that everyone goes through grief differently. You know, the stages of grief, or everyone grieves differently even. So, you know, recognizing that if someone is maybe different or not experiencing the same things, or that you're kind of noticing some changes in them, maybe that's the way they're experiencing their grief. You know, that now our safety has been kind of compromised. We're not doing our routine normally. And so, you know, people are going to grieve differently. And so the person that's really agitated may be grieving, or the person that's really sad and anxious is going to be grieving. The person that's kind of in denial about everything may be grieving. But so really being, first of all, aware that it could be that grief, the loss of kind of what we knew and what we were used to. And then so just a little bit more about depression, you know, obviously, and not to minimize anyone that has, you know, been diagnosed with depression or clinically depression, but like situationally, I think we're going to see a lot more depressive symptoms. We're going to see more sadness. We're going to see people that maybe are kind of hopeless. You know, we don't see a lot of positivity. It doesn't think like things are not looking better. You know, everywhere we look, it's more negative. So again, just acknowledging that, and just kind of really avoiding the whole, oh, it's going to be fine. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Just get out of bed and go do your routine and you'll be fine. Just like we talked about really earlier, like really dismissing that. And so really being aware that it's really okay to feel that way in these times, and just kind of being with that person and just saying, well, I am here, you know?
Yeah, and I think one of the words to kind of associate to with, hold on, my train of thought is leaving me, it's just gone, depression. I don't know, it's gone.
Usually I can get you back, but no, don't even know where I was.
I have nothing. I don't know.
What are some, you know, what are some red flags as friends and family that we need to look for, that, you know, if somebody has gone, you know, too deep into depression where it becomes dangerous, what are some red flags that we need to look for?
Yeah, I would definitely say if they were very active with the family, with staying in communication, and you're starting to like not hear from them as much, right? So the more somebody's withdrawing or isolating when they weren't before, I would say kind of also the opposite. Just because they're still showing up, be mindful of maybe how they're engaging in conversation. Like what words are they saying now that maybe they weren't before? Is their tone of voice different? Are they shorter, right? Is their fuse just really short now? Maybe they're not yelling, but like everything is like, well, yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, and it's like, whoa, I'm just asking, or I was, I just wanted to know if you wanted food, or, whatever it is. Kind of when we start seeing these overreactions to maybe a very simple, non-threatening situation, is going to be a red flag. Maybe not of depression, but something is up. Their stress has increased, and that's when we need to start asking questions, right? And not, hey, what's wrong with you? But that's not normally, what's different. Like I noticed that about you, or I noticed the last couple times you've been at mom's, like you're just really quiet. Like I'm just wondering what you're thinking about. Like, and it just has to be that simple, right? You just want to be able to reflect to them. So talking about what can you do when you start noticing these things. I mean, those would be some of my red flags. Is like their communication and their level of engagement. Just with people. But the other thing too, like then what can you do about that? Is reflecting to them, just saying what you observe in them, like the changes in them, and then just asking, like, I'm just wondering what that's about, or I'm kind of worried because that's not your usual behavior, and I just want to understand if there's something I can do, right? And there might be nothing you can do, and the person might say, well, I don't know, whatever, it just all sucks. Well, okay, but then that's where all you have to say is like, I hear you, it does suck. I'm like, that's it.
And especially, I mean, I think if it's someone that you're really, really close to, kind of even knowing, like if they used to be very focused or very goal-oriented, very job-oriented, and they're not really concentrating as much anymore, there's a lot of focus. I mean, even if someone's telling you, like, oh, I can never sleep, and that's a new thing for them, or they sleep all the time, and that's new for them. So really anything that's kind of new, that is different from what that you're used to for that person.
Yeah, like changing eating habits would be true. Like, are they eating more or less than they used to? Especially like for kids or even other people who were very like future oriented. Like, when I'm gonna go do this when this happens, or next week when I go to grandma's, I want this to happen. And now all of a sudden it's like, I don't care. Like, I'm not gonna talk about it. I've lost interest in everything. That's when I would say we need to really start tuning in a little bit more. And asking questions. And that doesn't mean we need to start like interviewing people or like, interrogating, I guess, but we at least need to let them know, like, hey, I see you. I see you're struggling, and just know that, like, I might not have the answers, but like, if you need something, come talk to me, come tell me or tell somebody.
Yeah, I think it's that too, especially saying like, or not expecting them to tell you something's wrong, but just putting it out there. I saw on Instagram, which like I just said, cut off from social media, but I can't really, something, a meme or whatever of someone asking a question, and the person in the text message said, no, I'm really fine. And the person responded, you said that, but I don't think so. And they kind of said, here's what I've noticed. You don't have to say anything, but just know that I'm here. And just kind of point these things out, not sounding accusatory. And just, saying, hey, I noticed this, this, and this. If you need something, I'm here for you. Just kind of putting yourself out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just starting there, because, as people that just care for our friends and family, we want to solve it right away, and we want to take it to another level, and it might kind of, spiral things in a worse way or make them upset. And I think just acknowledging, like you said, just the first step is acknowledging, and then going from there, and just making sure that they know that they care. I wanted to jump into, the big reason that we're going through all this is because of fear. We have fear of everything. It's our fear of the safety that we lost, fear of getting sick, fear of losing our jobs, fear of so much. And I wanted to go into, Madi had a question.
Yes.
And I really wanted to dive into that. She said, how can we combat our fear? What steps can we take to help ourselves reason and rationalize better while it's happening? I mean, for example, my anxiety goes through the roof when I think about work. I'm worried about what it might be like when I finally am back and I have students in my classroom. You know, and I feel for these teachers. I feel for all of our essential workers, for anybody that has to go out to work, and they're put into these stressful environments while still trying to take care of their family. So it's just fear of losing everything, and it has just it's blanketed our city. And you know, what advice can you offer her?
I think first of all, I mean, I think when we think of fear, this is just me, and I don't want to speak for both of us, but it again usually triggers this kind of like primitive response, right? We have these fear responses, and like it can be really crippling for some people because we kind of freeze and don't know what to do. You know, it can be this kind of fight mode where we get, you know, we try to fight something or kind of fight towards it. But again, I like the word that she used in the question, which was how to rationalize the fear, because it's one thing to have a fear for something that's totally irrational. But, you know, right now, I don't think that these fears are irrational. I think they're very rational. I think the first thing is to acknowledge, like, it's okay for me to feel this way. It's okay to be afraid. And then kind of go through the steps of what can I do to still be safe? What can I control?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. I think that when we talk about rationalizing something out, is we really have to do our best because there is so much that is out of our control right now. And that's, I just remembered, and I can connect this back to my depression thing. Okay, I'm here for it. Okay. So it's not only that are people feeling like maybe hopeless, but they're feeling powerless.
Yes.
And because we have so little control in the situation. And it's that lack of power or that sense of power that leads us to fall into our fears, and which leads us into this depression and this heightened sense of anxiety and stress that interrupts all of our other behaviors that we talked about, like food and, you know, eating, sleeping, and just functioning, right? And so really focusing, and even if you have to write it down for yourself, like literally draw like 2 circles, and you can draw like one big circle and you draw like an inner circle, and in the inner circle is what you can control, and the outer circle is everything out of your control. And like literally write it down if you have to, because then you can like look at it every day and say, nope, it's not in my control, it's not in my circle, I need to just leave it alone. And that's where we practice just saying it is what it is, right? Like, so like for teachers, it sucks. Like, I don't even have a professional word for it. It just sucks that they are faced with this challenge right now. It's just so overwhelming. I just can't even imagine. And like, I'm overwhelmed like for them. So I know that they are stressed. But if they want to keep their job, right, at the same time, they're kind of stuck in this place. And so that's out of their control.
Right.
And while that is unfortunate, okay, what can I do for my classroom, for myself, my children at home, and my kids in my classroom? What can I do to make sure that I can show up to do my job to the best of my ability under these constraints? And I know there's already a lot of constraints, but that's literally all we can ask ourselves. I mean, that's what I would.
Yeah. And I would even say, like, what also in my control is, you know, I can educate other people to do these things. I can be an advocate and talk to, you know, whoever I need to talk to and give my opinion about stuff. So really thinking, like, sometimes I think maybe people are like, well, the only thing I can do is I can stay at home or I can wear a mask. But not really. I mean, we can educate our friends and families on the importance of staying home, wearing your mask, taking all the precautions. You can call whoever you need to call and say, here's my opinion, this is what I think about things, and here's what I'm afraid of, these are the risks, these are the benefits. And really being able to say, like, I've done everything I can to combat this fear, and I'm prepared for it, or I've done everything I can, and I know that I can do what I need to keep myself safe. And really kind of write down exactly what is in our control of the situation. Because I think that's what a lot of fear is I'm not in control.
Yeah. Definitely. You know? I would say that that's true. And specifically for teachers, I mean, something that you can do to help yourself, like in the classroom setting, is I would say normalize that fear once the kids are in your classroom. You know, like first day, like let's talk about that. Who here was kind of scared to come today? Like you were really excited to see friends and to meet me, and I'm so glad to see your face. But you know what? Miss Snotty was kind of scared to be here today because she just wants to keep everybody safe and she doesn't want to get germs. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever is an age-appropriate way to explain that. And, like, let's just normalize it because that's how you can then empower your students and, like, that we're in this together, right? And that's what I would say, like, with kids at home or in that classroom setting is to we're going to call a spade, right? Like, the elephant in the room is that we're probably all a little worried about being here today. And now I don't get to go to eat in the cafeteria, maybe. I don't get to go to gym. I have to stay in my classroom all the time. And what do you mean I have to like eat at my desk? And can I please get up and walk the hallway? Like,
mask on.
And now I have to get my mask on, and miss, it hurts my face, and like, you know, all of these things. Let's just talk about it, because you know what? That's already going to disarm some of that fear, right? And so when I say those words, I definitely stole them from the late Dr. Karen Purvis is her name, and she's phenomenal. But she speaks about disarming fear, and she talks about connection being the way to do that, right? So when we can develop emotional safety through connection, like with our peer group or like a teacher to their students, that's how we will begin to like decrease our fears.
Well, and I know that the question specifically kind of mentioned school and teachers, but even I think a step further is, parent to child, or an adult to a child, or an employer to an employee, and just acknowledging that we're going to do it together. Like, I don't like any of these things either, but here's what we're doing to protect each other. And then not having this whole attitude of do this, and not making this kind of like forceful thing, but having that conversation about all of it together. And so it kind of, I know that the thing right now really is school and teachers and kids, but just to say that connection that we talked about earlier, human connection, that can go with any relationship too, and fear, and kind of disarming the fear that way too.
Yeah, and Lisa, I know we're going to get into like relationships and stuff, but I kind of feel like this is a good way to mention that, is like, these are the same things that you can use like with your partner, like whether that's your husband, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, like whatever partner that is for you that you live with. This is the exact conversation too, is like, how do we help each other, not just like as humans, but also to be the best parents we can be right now. And, so that you can help me be the one, maybe I still have to go into work. So here's what I need from you to help me feel motivated or whatever, right? And this is what I'm going to do to help keep y'all safe, or, whatever it is. That exact same conversation can be had with your partner. And I think normalizing that fear between your partner is critical, right? So when we try to put on our brave faces for maybe our families, that can be kind of hurtful too, because they think, oh my gosh, I'm the only one feeling this way because nobody else is saying anything, or look, mom and dad look fine, or, you as wife might look at husband and say, I mean, he looks good, what's my problem? Like I'm freaking out for no reason. And so, but if we can pull that Band-Aid off and just talk about it, that can really at least alleviate that, like you're not holding it in, right? Because it's when we're holding all that in, we're really holding our breath. Because you worry that if I take that deep breath, it's all going to come out.
The more you hold it in, I think, just kind of give a visual, like a pressure cooker, the more you hold it in, eventually it's going to explode. And usually it explodes on the wrong person, and it just kind of hums out and can kind of create chaos everywhere. So being able to kind of let that steam off a little bit. And I think that even goes back to the first thing we talked about, is how do we handle this anxiety? What do we do for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
To let some of the steam off naturally, or with other people, and appropriately too.
And I think, it goes, the dynamic of every relationship that we have right now has just been changed completely. With whether it is with our parents, with our children, with our friends. In every sense, I feel like, we kind of want to isolate ourselves sometimes, or we kind of have our own, thoughts about how to stay safe and how you're living your life and it's not safe, and that creates such a disconnection at times, because we have different beliefs and we have different lifestyles, and at the same time we want to still have healthy relationships, and all of this, we're just being forced to do so many things, just like Madi was saying, and Melinda is also a teacher. They are being forced to take so many risks, and usually with risk in a normal day, that takes decision making. You talk about it. They don't have that option. We're taking risks for our family, and those relationships get compromised during this pandemic, and it kind of it's a strain on I think every single relationship. And it is for moms. Moms are so exhausted. I know for myself, it is absolutely, and I can't even imagine for a teacher that is a parent, having to work, having to deal with this and still having to teach their kids at home, it is exhausting. I feel like we are asked to do so much, and our body and mind just cannot keep up. It's like we're over here racing, and we're trying to. It's like we're just trying to keep up, and
Right.
we're trying to cope, and find ways just to stay sane most of the time. I mean, everybody I talk to uses the words exhausted and lonely, and they're just worried. And at the same time, there's so much bonding that's going on. I don't want to just talk about all the fear because it is bittersweet. I have had the most amazing moments ever. I have during this time with my children, with my husband. We have grown. I'm going to start crying. We have grown so much in my relationship. So at the same time, it's I feel like as humans, we are just pushed beyond our limits right now. It is absurd, and and at the same time, there's so much that a lot of our weaknesses come out, or our strengths. And I find a lot of people are either in either of those boats right now. It seems like we're kind of one extreme or the other. It's insane. Either you're thriving or you're kind of over here.
Yeah.
And there doesn't seem to be a medium, but we're all trying to find normalcy. And I love that you use, disarming fear in those connections. I try very hard to keep those connections with my children, with my husband, and I often find myself saying, I'm sorry, I'm just exhausted.
Yeah.
I just, yesterday, I literally only get my me time at night, and it's like, oh, wake up early in the morning. Well, I want some time to sleep too.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, I want to give moms advice, and I know we don't have the time, but I know we need self-care too. I know self-care is vital for just our brain, and a lot of those techniques that you were saying, just being outside and kind of finding time for ourselves. I still think, in scheduling it, whether you say, look, kids, go to your room and play for a minute or whatever, or, husband, take the kids out, or mom, whatever it is, whether you're a single parent or you have a partner, there's, trying to find a way to do that. I think is so important to give our mind a break. I mean,
yeah.
It is insane how we're just overworked and overloaded right now. And right at the same time, I don't want to be so negative because I have had, so many connections and just different things that come up that I wouldn't have ever seen in my children that I do now. And it is, life has just become something just so precious, and something that I just will not take for granted at all.
Yeah. And I think, and I know, like, I'm getting, like, kind of, like, choked up too, like, listening to you, because I would 100% agree. And, like, so to kind of flip this conversation, around, I would say, like anything, right? Like this, you just said it beautifully. You're focusing on what actually matters. That while all these other things matter, because we do need to stay safe and we need to protect ourselves and our families and all these things, but at home, like, that's really what matters, right? And so looking at that and maybe shifting our priorities around, like, this is the chance, right? Like, so if you've always wanted to, like, I know you mentioned spirituality earlier, right? So if you've always wanted to have family prayer night, where, like, every Thursday you sit with your kids and your husband and you pray or, like, read from scripture for, like, 30 minutes. If you've always wanted that and never been able to establish that, now's the time, right? And we have these opportunities, and we might be exhausted from other things, but maybe that means we let go of other stuff. Like, if we're definitely the person who's like, nope, the house has to be in perfect order before I go to bed every night, otherwise I'm not going to sleep. Well, you know what? Maybe we allow for a little bit of self-compassion and some grace and say, you know what? I just cannot fold that laundry tonight. And that is okay. That doesn't make you less of a parent, less of a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister. Like, you're not less than because you didn't do it this one time. And even if it was 3 days in a row, you're still not less than, okay? Because you're really trying to like you need to save some of that energy to use it for other stuff. I don't know.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Was it's okay to say I need this right now, and to feel empowered to like make change, or to like feel empowered to say like this is kind of my boundary, and that's okay. Because in this situation, here's what we're gonna do, and to just really like do it for yourself, and kind of take that self-worth as like I'm going to be okay with this.
Yes.
And I'm going to be okay this time. We're gonna make it through this. Kind of that mantra that I think someone in the very beginning mentioned that too, is, keep on reminding yourself, like, I need this, I can do this, and this is what I need right now, and I deserve this. There's no one saying that you don't deserve to sleep in late, and how can you make those priorities change, and how can you make those plans work for everybody?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think too, I know, every household has such a dynamic, situation in terms of their family, and whether you do have a partner, and I know there are a lot of single moms out there, I think the one thing that we can all do is, have an accountability partner. I have, recently really taken to that, and it has been amazing, and I myself have my prayer warriors that I go to, and I say, look, can you be here for me this whole week? Text me every day, and, pray for me, check on me. And it has made a world of a difference for me, because sometimes, if I want to be able to have somebody that can relate and understand, and I don't want to always put that pressure either on my husband. We have an open communication, but I think we need to alleviate that sometimes and have a mentor or a coach that can help us with that. And I know that's where you guys come in too, because I feel I didn't grow up that way. Everything was always like, you're fine. We just did not believe in that. I mean, that wasn't even a thing. I don't even know. That didn't even exist.
Right.
And, and I hate that, but I have learned so much and grown so much. And I have definitely become stronger as a wife and as a mom, as a friend, as a, community leader. I really want to be mindful of what's available to me to become stronger. And sometimes, those people, accountability is gold to me. And I think through this all, I kind of have had this like less of me, more of you. Yeah, I need to support my husband, but he needs to support me too. And it's like, there's no level of, I need to support you more or you support me more. Right. And when I think I gave that up was, I supported him completely and, gave him everything. And in turn, it was like, wow, that reciprocates to me. And it was a load off rather than like, let me dump myself on you and my worry about the kids or worry about our health, and rather empower my partner, empower my children. And it has empowered me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think you do have to make yourself vulnerable sometimes, and in that sense, to get people to feel like they can help you too, and open up and allow them to kind of be accountable with you too.
Yeah. Allowing ourselves to receive care as much as we give care is such a challenge, I know, for most of us, right? But I would say, like you mentioned, just this idea of like, as a city, we're grieving, right? But like that, San Antonio is so special in that way because we are such a close-knit community for being such a large city. And that mantra, they're like that saying that's been going around, we're all in this together, like reminding ourselves of that, that like, we are literally not alone in this. Like the entire city is going through this, the world is going through this, and we just need to tap into it, right? Like our accountability partners are out there. Even if we're not like best friends with them, there are people who we can turn to who totally get it.
Yes.
Right? And so for teachers, I would say rely on your fellow teachers. And that doesn't mean maybe you spend every evening like kind of griping about like everything that went wrong in the day or how hard it was. I think it's important to have those conversations, but then equally say, how are you doing? We don't need to complain. Like the school is what it is and we're being required to go. Like that's not different. How are you? And what can I do? I'm in the classroom next to you. What can I do to help you, maybe motivate you in the morning? Or, is there a mantra we can say to each other? Like, hey, we've got this. Like, try to find ways to help build that support system and like strengthen that safety net.
But you have to be open to it and
Yes.
allow that to happen too, which can be hard, but just admitting that I need that person or being vulnerable for that can really be helpful too.
Hey, thank you guys. You were amazing. I mean, honestly, this has just been, a learning journey for me during this time to be able to get stronger, to help my friends and my family, and we just don't know what to do with ourselves at times. Like we're just like, what do we do with these feelings? What do we do with this change, this fear, all of this? But you're right. I mean, we are all in this together, and I think just like a lot of the words that I love that you use, empowering and finding mantras and disconnecting and connecting, but disconnecting from all these social media, but then connecting with the people that really can empower us. Were some of the really key takeaways, and just I think being mindful of our body and breathing and getting out of our element and really tapping into those senses and just saying we're okay. It really does. Like, it's like, this is what this is, and this is what we're going through. It is what it is, and sometimes I know when I do that, it's like this big load off, and I'm hoping that takes the load off of so many people out there trying to help one another or that feel lonely. You're not lonely, because I know we all have the same feelings, for sure. But you guys have definitely empowered me, and I know you have empowered our San Antonio community. We will support you. Can you tell everybody where to find you and the services that you offer?
Okay, so we are Concentric Counseling and Coaching. We're on Facebook and Instagram, Concentric C and C. And you can find our website underneath all those, and our about ourselves and the services we offer all there too.
Yeah, and so right now, the goal is to be able to offer individual and family therapy, hopefully group therapy in the future. But right now, I think our big push will really just be education, trying to educate the community. Really, like, we've reached out to several organizations in town already to try to do trainings for their employees, to really just try to provide as much education just about anything that people need really at this point, about how to better understand themselves and understand what we go through as humans, not because anything's wrong with us, but because we're human and things happen, and we're not just born knowing like what to do. So that's definitely so follow us on social media, and we're going to be posting about all kinds of things like that, and how to support parents and support kids and support yourself as a woman and as a man, and just everybody in the community. So
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I definitely feel stronger with all your advice and your support. And again, you guys make sure to follow them. I'll post their information. And if you guys, as a favor, just maybe post like a recap of something, that way they can know what we talked about and some of just the key takeaways for all of us here that are going through everything. San Antonio, we love you. We're here for you. We're all in this together, and we're going to continue this journey about learning how to become stronger. So please stay tuned, and thank you to my guests. Love you guys. Bye.
Thank you.